Welcome back to Black Man We Hear You, Episode 2, Part 3, the Spirituality Edition. On this special episode, we are in the heart of Harlem, baby, at Harlem's very own historic Grace Congregational Church, located at 306 West 139th Street. We asked the Reverend, where do we go from here spiritually while keeping our sanity during the pandemic? Are both therapy and church necessary for the Black household? And what advice would you give to your fellow pastors during these times? Joining us today, we have Reverend Nigel Pearce, and I'm your host, Shadina Shavar. Welcome back to Black Men We Hear You, and today we are with Pastor Nigel Pearce of Harlem's very own Grace Congregational Church. Pastor, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
Yeah. First, let me just say I appreciate your smile during these hard times because the place is pretty empty.
Yes.
And my first question for you is, how has the church adjusted to the pandemic since quarantine started?
Well, we have adjusted by daily Zoom calls, so we have an opportunity to check in with folks and still connect with people, which is what's missing in this moment, in this time, that we can't connect like we usually do. And so I thought in a couple of months that would have petered out, but that has gone stronger and stronger, that people really have a need and a deep need to connect with one another. So Zoom has been our tool to connect with each other and spend more time with each other.
How do you define spirituality?
So spirituality is anything that connects us with God. And so that can vary from, for some people it's art, for some people it's music, for others it's reading, it's prayer. But I think anything that connects us with divine and with God is spirituality. So
I feel like sometimes just as a person that's a part of a church, we don't acknowledge maybe some of the stress or the changes that our pastors go through. And what is something that you would love for people to know about pastors during this time that you think is very important?
I think you need to know that your pastor is a person, is a human being. And I remember there was a week or 2 weeks when I did 9 funerals, and I really had to take a moment off, and I needed a week to just be by myself to recuperate and to regain, because you don't realize in all the times that you're giving and Sunday you're giving that you can end up being empty yourself. And so people need to just know that their pastors need nurturing and need time as well to heal and to recuperate from all of that.
And what's the biggest, the greatest, should I say, advice you can give to your fellow pastors?
To my fellow pastors is always have other pastors that you can talk with. It's difficult. You can't talk with your congregants because they're looking to you for help. But you need other pastors who are going through the similar situations and strains and struggles and all that you're doing. And my greatest benefit is that I have a cadre of other pastors who I can always pick up the phone and talk with. And I call them my elders, and they are people that I can always talk with. And they've been through it. They've been in ministry 50, 40, 30 years before me, and so they know the struggles and the strains and all of that one goes through. And it's important that as a man that I allow myself to be in the covering of another man who will help me get through these moments.
I love that. With the shift that's happening in the household, you yourself personally, if you do you have children, maybe, can I ask?
I have a daughter who's 15.
Okay, and I'm assuming she's doing some online schooling?
All online schooling.
So how did you adjust to, now not only is the church in the house, but so is the school, so is work, and everything else. How did you adjust?
So initially we had to make sure that everybody had their own little space and workstation so that they could do what they needed to do. So setting up my daughter's desk and computer and workstations so that, and my wife as well, so we worked next to each other. And that's sometimes challenging when you're all on Zoom calls and and how do you give each other space. So we had to learn to just work with each other and give each other enough space to work.
What's the biggest difference that you've recognized in your own household since the pandemic?
You know, I would like to say that I have gotten a chance more to understand that I needed to take more time with family. That I was so busy before, running here, running there, taking care of everybody else, that the pandemic slowed us down enough to realize that I was really actually spending more time at home. We had a routine, mostly 9 to 5 we were working, but at 5 o'clock everything shut down and we had dinner together and we either played cards or board games and then watched a TV show together, which we had never done. And so it really, in this moment, really showed us the importance of family and taking more time for family, that I was able to. I realized there were times when, you know, my poor daughter, I'd be working here and working there, and I'd be tired. And I got a chance through this moment to just realize that I need to spend more time with her, and that I got to know her friends, and you know, as she was on Zoom, I'd get to see her friends and talk more with her friends. And so that has meant so much more to me in this moment, is really taking that more time.
Pastor, with the many lives that we continue to lose, and grieving, how are you navigating as a vessel first to be there for people and to witness it?
Yeah.
And then second, what advice can you give us around grieving and handling losing a life?
So the first thing is, as a pastor, I almost feel like I'm failing in the moment because we can't be there, right? People are dying in the hospitals. We can't visit them. Their families can't visit them. I can't really go to people's homes now. I have some elderly folks that I have to be very concerned about. So I feel like the personal care that I would normally give in just, we call it the ministry of presence, just being with somebody, I really can't do that now in order to stay, you know, keep them safe. And so I have to be much more cognizant, calling on the phone and being aware, but not being able to have that personal presence, it has been definitely difficult in this moment. And as far as the grieving, I fear that we're not being able to grieve fully in this hour and moment. It hasn't really hit us all the losses that we've had. And you know, in the inauguration, prior to that night before, they sat out with the 400 lights for the 400,000. But we really haven't, I don't think, personally have gotten the chance to really grieve and show our grief in this moment, in this hour. So I believe there is coming a time when we're going to have to grieve for the losses that we've had. And it's important that we go through that and acknowledge the people that we've lost.
Where do I take this paranoia that I'm under that almost seems to handicap me? Because I'd be lying to myself if I say, if I try to ignore what I see on television. But then I do feel like I'm lying to myself because I'm not really honoring my faith as it's being called in high demand right now, if that makes sense. You know, like I thank God every day I'm very faithful. I do believe that I'm protected. But I walk around with what feels like this paranoid state of being, where I'm not even really living, I'm just existing and trying to make sure I'm avoiding whatever I'm trying to avoid. I don't even know what I'm trying to avoid. But what do I do with this fear that I constantly wake up with?
Well, of course, we know in Timothy it says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of sound mind, of good judgment. And not to say that we have to acknowledge the fear that we have, right? Because that's a real feeling. But what do we do with it? And what we have to do with it is sort of come to a rationalization of, what am I afraid of? What am I really afraid of in this moment? And so, am I afraid of losing everything? Am I afraid of losing a loved one? What am I really afraid of? And that's where we have to really do some deep digging in ourselves, because what's really coming of that fear? Because there are times I know I'm afraid, but I don't know what I'm really afraid of. Mm-hmm. And so there are times when if I can dig down deep and figure out what is that fear coming from, it can help me get closer to God and help me understand that I stand on a firm foundation that cannot be shaken. And when I can stand on that foundation, I can understand, I know who God is. And God is everlasting and never changing, the same he was today as he is tomorrow. And what he did for those folks, he'll do for us today. And so when I can hold on to that, I can let go of my fear. And so I find that I've got to hold on to something stronger, much more steadier than my personal and fragile and foible self, which certainly can be shaken in moments.
With the big conversation around mental health, especially with Black men, what's your thoughts around the approach to mental health when it comes up to dealing with Black men in our community?
Right. This is important. We don't seek help. We don't ask for help. There was a time where I went through a very difficult moment in my life, even in ministry, right? I was going through a difficult moment with family and with losing my parents. They were dying of cancer, and I really needed therapy. And I went to seek out a professional therapist, and she worked with me for 2 years, and I remember at the end of the 2 years, I said, I'm good. And she says, you're good, but you can be better. Mm. And she took me through some more work on me and really helped me and really understood who I was in the moment, and someone to really professionally knowing what to do and how to guide me through that. And we don't usually seek out professionals or therapists. I know it's something that is very timid in our communities to do, or there's a stigma attached to it, right? That we don't do it. But I gotta say, we really do need to reach out to the help and ask for help. I think I heard someone say earlier in one of your interviews, looking for help and seeking help. There's people around us who can actually give us the guidance that we need.
Absolutely. When it comes up to you said that you not only do you do church, but you do therapy. What's the difference for you? For those who may, maybe sometimes what I hear is we could pray it away, give it to Jesus. But then there's also a time with therapy is good. So what is the difference?
You need all the tools in the toolbox, right? So for me, I can help you in spiritual counseling, but my rule is that if you come to me 3 times with the same issue, you need to go to someone professional after that. And so that's my rule, is that if you come to me 3 times with the same thing, it's interesting because I learned this Indian tribe had this thing that if you complain about the same thing 3 times, they form a circle and they leave you. If you want to still complain about that, you got to stay out the circle. If you want to decide to make a change, you can come back and join the circle. And so I think we have to understand from one another that at some point, and hopefully your pastor knows at that level that says you really need to seek somebody else, and hopefully they can either give you a referral or know where to send you. But you need to know when spiritual counseling is what you need and the spiritual needs, and then there's times when you have psychological needs and other things that really need some deep tissue work.
I love that. I got a couple more questions before we let you go.
Okay.
Pastor, when it comes up to the word, if you can, the word, what part of the word during these times do you find resonates the most with you, or would you offer to the next brother?
So, I did a lot of work last week on Imago Dei, which is God created us in his image. And so I think in this time when we feel so divided as a nation, as a country, that for me, Imago Dei says, God didn't just say, I'm creating you. He said, I'm creating you in my image, which means 8 billion people. The one thing that connects us all is that we are created in God's image. And so it doesn't matter, you may think something that I completely despise, but we're still connected. We're still brothers and sisters. And so when we can see that we are still connected, one thing connects us all. And we may believe completely opposite, but we still are connected. And I think in this moment, we've got to recognize that you're my brother and my sister, no matter what you believe, no matter what you think. And I'm doing work on Jonah right now because he was to preach to the people that he didn't like. And sometimes God calls us to talk to people, and he said, I don't want to do it, and he went the other way, right? This is the time when we have to, in spite of our beliefs, in spite of our feelings about people, there are people that still need help, and we have to reach those people.
What is the biggest misconception you think black men may have around spirituality, those that are hesitant to maybe connect a little bit more?
I think most people, when it comes to spirituality, think that I have to just be good, I have to give up my having fun, and I think I couldn't have more fun and freedom than in my spirituality. When I know who I am and I know who created me, then I can step out in the world in a different person, and then I am free. I'm free to be who I am. And so I think the spirituality piece, where people don't realize is their strength, is their power, people see it as something limiting and something that will hold them back from being who they really are. And I think we have to realize that if you've been given a gift and a talent and a strength, and you know where that came from, then you can take that and give it to this world as it was supposed to be.
So speaking of the church, what is next for Grace Congregational Church?
Well, Grace Congregational Church has a new beginning. It's been, it started in 1923, and this has been a 7-year project that we've been thinking about. How do you reimagine church? What would church look like today? And so for the people, I said to them, let's forget about the building. Let's start church today. And all of these amazing ideas came out about ministries to help kids, to help older folks, to help the community. And I said, that's what we're going to do. And out of that came the idea to create a new community center church that will serve the community in a great way, and not just Sunday morning, but all throughout the week. And so having yoga, having a gym, having all things that people can come and realize that spirituality is holistic, right? It's not just about you're praying, but it's all about your body, it's all about your thoughts, it's all about how you eat, it's all about wellness. And so we want to think about you in a whole piece and take care of you wholly and spiritually.
So Pastor, how do we actively church at home? How do we do that?
So actively churching at home. I mean, you're still reaching out to people. And I think this hour and this moment, we can, and I say this because on Zoom, I am so much more in your home than I ever was before. And it's ironic, right? In a time where we can't see each other, I'm more in your home. I see your kids, I see your messy house, I see your dog, I see everything, right? And so I feel like there's even a more connection now with people. And in a sense, people have been much more vulnerable to talk about their pain and their hurt on Zoom than they ever were sitting in the pews or in church. So I feel like church has gotten even better on Zoom because people have been feeling a little bit more freer to speak about themselves and some of the pain and the hurt. Because, we come in church and we say, I'm too blessed to be stressed, and they look good, and you have no idea the disaster at home they just left. But in Zoom, you can't really hide it, right? So you get to connect with people. You know what's going on in their homes. You know what's happening. And so church is still happening because we're still connecting.
This is my final question for you that I ask all the brothers on our show, and I'm so honored to have our first pastor. Thank you so much, and this is our first time filming in the church, but what do you love about being a black man?
Well, I tell you, I love about being a black man is the struggle, right? Because we were counted not to succeed. We were counted out. And, when you see the George Floyd and what black men are up against, right? Every day that when I look at a police officer, I don't see safety, right? I'm not looking at safety. But as a black man, I feel and I know the struggle that we fight each and every day. And so I know when we walk down the street and we see each other, we give ourselves the nod because we know what we've each called.
Unspoken nod.
The unspoken nod, right? Because we all know the struggle and the pain to succeed. That when I walk in a store, they're looking at me funny, right? They're not looking to help me. They're looking at, is he gonna steal something? He gonna take something? If I drive a new car, right? I get pulled over, like, whose car is this? I was living in a house and the alarm went off and the officer came to the house and he said, whose house is this? Right? So we get those odd questions and we feel like we're out of place. And yet we have to show people that we truly do belong here. And so there is a massive struggle that we have. And so when we exceed, Dave Chappelle said it, when anybody succeeds, we celebrate it because we know the struggle that a black person has got to go through to get where they are.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Amen.
God bless your church. God bless your congregation. And we look forward to finding ways to support you and the rest of the community as best we can during this pandemic.
I wish you much success and all the blessings upon you.
Thank you so much. And make sure you stick around for our next episode of Black Man, We Hear You.
Amen.